Hello, I'm Paul Peterson. You know, each month we receive many letters and phone calls from viewers with questions relating to the senior and family caregiver issues they are experiencing. Viewers are put in contact with staff at the Department of Aging who will often work with them one-to-one to resolve their problems and connect them with the services they need. Often we find many questions are of a similar nature. So today, we thought we'd discuss some of the more common questions we receive in hopes of helping more viewers get the help they need. Please stay tuned for Aging in LA. Fortunately for city residents, they have the Department of Aging and their citywide senior centers to turn to when they have questions relating to senior and family caregiver issues. Staff can provide advice and a wealth of information about available services that many people don't even know exist. Today, to discuss some of the most common issues that viewers call into the show about are Gordon Gibb, Director of Social Services at St. Barnabas Senior Services, and Sheila Moore of the Gay and Lesbian Elder Housing. Welcome to you both. What a treat to have you here.
Thank you.
And boy, you volunteered to answer the most common questions. I promise you won't be bored. But Sheila, let me start with you. First of all, do you discover that people are actually astonished that there is a gay and lesbian elder housing place to go?
I think people are pleasantly surprised.
Great.
You know, I mean, with we were just talking earlier about the gray tsunami. That affects all our communities, and certainly the LGBT community as well. So they're pleasantly surprised. It's the first in the nation, actually, for affordable housing for the LGBT aging community.
Well, you should be really proud of that.
We are very.
There are issues that are unique to that community.
Yes.
That need to be dealt with sensitively.
Absolutely.
Because sometimes a lot of baggage goes on when you're in that group. You may not have the best family relationships. Absolutely,
absolutely. Sometimes I think with the aging part of the LGBT community, often find that they have very limited support. What we also find is that the access to services or how our seniors might feel comfortable approaching services is very different from perhaps the mainstream, the heterosexual community.
Okay, well let's be specific to this community of gay and lesbian, transgender. They would be, I would think, would be more concerned about caregiver issues if they're bringing someone into their home, someone who might not be comfortable in that setting.
Absolutely.
Yes?
Absolutely.
So you're able to say, look, this is a group of caregivers who are sensitive to your concerns.
Right, absolutely, yeah. I mean, at Triangle Square, which is the first building for gay and lesbian elder housing, the residents there have folks who are there to help them, that they found themselves who are doing very, very well. And then other people who come in who are interested, I'm very, very protective and screen and like to hear about their experiences and if they have any concerns at all. Well, we've been very lucky.
That's where the internal grapevine of specific communities is so important. You need to share this information with your friends and your contacts because all of us are going through this. Now, Gordon, I'm going to throw one at you here.
Please.
Well, one of the most common questions we get at the department is where do older Angelinos turn for help when they have questions about senior and family caregiving issues, whatever they may be?
And it is a very common question, I'm sure, to the LA Department of Aging, and it's certainly one that we get as well. Certainly, anyone who's got a question regarding aging and assisting family members who are aging, they can call the Department of Aging, Los Angeles Department of Aging. It's a wonderful resource. It's a wonderful network. The Department of Aging has divided the greater city of Los Angeles into service areas, and so they would be determining where that person's residence is, and then getting them in contact with that senior center there.
And sometimes just walking in to the nearest senior center is a good thing. I know I saw this in Hollywood where people in the community suddenly discovering that this place exists were walking in and saying, "You mean you serve meals here? You have exercise classes?" And go,
Right,
"Well,
right.
yes."
Yeah.
Because I had no idea before I became a part of the caregiver corps in Los Angeles. I had no idea of the number of services that were available to seniors.
Yes. And we think of bringing services to the younger age, teenage drop-in centers or community centers, and those are important, crucial in fact, but no less senior centers for targeted issues like, as you mentioned, Paul, nutrition, but also certainly transportation, housing support, connecting to government services, home-delivered meals on wheels.
Right, Meals on Wheels.
We could go on, both for the senior who's interested, but also the family member, both either in the area or calling in from out of state.
Right, and you know, as a person now engaged in these caregiving issues, even knowing that there is relief, there is respite for the caregiver. That is, what a remarkable, I just think of all the vacations that don't get taken because you think, oh, nobody else can handle this. And yet the city can direct you to services that say, wait a second, you need a break.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, Sheila was just sharing before we went on camera about the perception of caregivers who are family members, who are not paid and don't see themselves as caregivers, but rather as just the family member who cares for another family member.
Right.
Thus, when they hear about caregiver opportunities, such as you mentioned, that's for someone who gets paid. And I'd like to be able to access those, but I'm a family member. I'm not a caregiver, and of course they are.
And absolutely they are. And it's interesting. You understand that you're giving care for a very young person, you know, a toddler or something. But somehow with our parents, and you mentioned this earlier, Sheila, about am I in the right position here, making decisions for mom or dad?
Right.
Because it almost seems like you're not so much intruding as absorbing their identity.
Right, right. Very, very challenging. Very challenging to provide care for a parent. And even definitely for a spouse too, but when you're talking about parents, you're talking about someone that, irregardless of what the relationship was, whether it was positive or negative, now you find yourself in a position of lending a hand, of feeling responsible, of trying to coordinate resources, and that's where the local senior centers and the Department of Aging comes in. You know, I always like to think of it as like the LA, we're fairly lucky. We have lots of resources. The idea is, how do you find that entry point? How do you find that point to access of all these resources? And that's where the Department of Aging and where the senior centers come in to say, and even help in identifying, because I think when we're in the kind of the mire and the emotion of caring for someone, sometimes we need someone to sit down and say, have you thought of, you might need, I know of other families who can gently guide you through this maze and hopefully make life better for the person that you're caring for and ease, like you say, some of your stress and burden.
Right, and this is not a unique position. You find plenty of grandparents are raising their children now, and they have health issues complicating that. And before I forget this, I want to point out to you, you can reach us directly with this 800 number, 510-2020. We'll be flashing that up on the screen. But if you're one of those persons who's saying, I don't know what I'm supposed to do next, call this number, 800-510-2020. Now, how about this 311 system that we have in Los Angeles? That's the neatest thing going. Yeah, I mean, whether it's trash being picked up or senior services, you can dial 311 and find out who to call.
Yes, yes. And I think it's been a wonderful opportunity for people who are not certainly fluent in where to find things in the government system. And as an attendant to that, as you may know, healthycities.org has a visual map that you can put that connects all those services into that website, and then you can get a visual of where these locations are, their contact people and phone numbers. So it's just another layer in this targeted information system.
Right. Now, I mentioned the senior centers. There are 16 throughout the Los Angeles area. Again, if you do the 800-510-2020, that's a pretty simple number, 510-2020, you can find out where they are. Now, we had a question from Michael in Woodland Hills. And it said the following: my 85-year-old father offered to drive me to the airport a few weeks ago. This was the first time I'd been in a car with him in some years, and his driving worried me. We've all, with elderly parents, gone through this one. How do you broach this subject to a longtime Los Angelino that, you know, driving maybe is going to be too challenging for you right now? Do you get those questions too?
Oh, absolutely.
Absolutely, right.
Absolutely, and I think it's one of the hardest.
Yes.
Particularly living in Los Angeles.
Yes.
It's a city built around the automobile and with the highways, and getting around is certainly so important to maintaining independence.
Well, for example, AAA has a wonderful program to help with this. They see these issues quite clearly.
Absolutely, yeah, and AARP also has a safe driving program too.
Of course.
Too.
Yeah.
And there is a discount, as we probably know, of 10% on your insurance if you were to have a successful completion of that program.
Right.
And that may be one way. Certainly there are multiple entry points to that discussion.
But did you even know that? Did you know that you can get a discount if you successful complete these programs that are being offered? It's a wonderful thing.
Right.
And we have too many news reports of the tragedies of an elderly person who really has just sort of lost their motor skills. Oh, now this one, it's not sometimes just our own family. Here's from James in Sherman Oaks. 2 Valley questions in a row. My next door neighbor is a widow and has lived on her own since her husband died 10 years ago. A few months ago, a tree damaged her roof, and she paid $2,000 to a supposed contractor who took the money in cash and disappeared. So how do we call on a neighbor's behalf? Where is this? Call the Department of Aging and then go from there?
I think certainly that would be a great point of contact. And there's also some great services out there in terms of legal services for seniors, such as Betzedic, which is a legal service. And they're fantastic. They have a complete elder law division, and they're fantastic in dealing and helping, again, like this whole maze, helping seniors through and really being advocates for them and helping them through something like this.
And it's a good idea to find a counselor just so you yourself know what resources are available, because it's almost overwhelming. The only corollary I've seen in my experience have been those families who have a disabled child and have lived within the system and sort of learned. But that's what's happening with our seniors community.
Without question.
It's quite a web.
Yes.
Without question.
And that is a challenge, Paul. Going back to your question about the person who puts the money out but doesn't get the service that they had paid for. Certainly there's layers of response to that, and we've talked about one in terms of connecting to Betzedic Legal Services, to LA Department of Aging. But I would also recommend, and this is maybe a tougher one, to call the police to let them know, because that puts a plot out on their map to see where are the scams going, and hopefully preventing the next one. That doesn't help the one that just happened. But at the same time, being able to help that person with the embarrassment of, I can't believe I did this. This isn't me. I'm not normally this way.
But and that is often the sign of aging, you know, because sometimes you lose that acuity. And it is important for people to know that our first responders in this city are trained to look for signs of difficulty in our senior population, many of whom are living alone. I know it maybe is too much to hope for, but many people in that condition who are living alone right now, this is not just a life alert bracelet. It's having some ability to notify a first responder that you have special medical needs. Unfortunately, we've got to take a break right now. It's that time. So when we come back, we will continue to answer questions that have been sent in by the viewers of Aging in LA. So please stay tuned. We'll be right back.
The biggest blessing in life is to realize your personal